A short notice UFC debut for the third fighter out of Tajikistan to represent the country in the UFC in 2023 after Nurullo Aliyev and won. I mean, we're talking about the Jaguar paw, Loic Rajabov. It is Tajik, if you didn't know, Muin Gafurov, and he's going to be taking on Sexi Mexi John Castaneda, who was originally due Mateus Mendonça in the matchup. So you do look at it, again, this fight was announced in the fact that Gafurov has a week and a half notice to make this debut. But all things considered, Muin Gafurov is a known commodity for MMA fans. And if you don't know, well, you're going to enjoy it, hopefully, because for Gafurov, he makes his one championship debut at 19 years old against Rhys McLaren. Loses that fight because he gets out-grappled.
But wait, Craig, is Rhys McLaren good?
So Rhys McLaren wins by decision and gets a title shot off of that.
He's very good.
Then Gafurov takes on Kevin Bellingon, who was coming off a title shot, and he loses that fight because does he get out-grappled? No, he gets outstruck. Yeah. But the guy's 20 years old. Then he wins a plethora of fights. He ends up with one once more, and he loses to John Lineker, who was coming off a close loss to Corey Sandhagen in Lineker's one championship debut. So Muin Gafurov took on a who's who over with one championship. He's taken on a who's who since. He ended up on Contender Series a couple of years ago. Takes on the Canadian Chad Anheliger. Loses a split decision in a fight that was... It was back and forth. You could have made an argument that Gafurov won two rounds. You could make an argument that Anheliger won 2 rounds. But overall, Gafurov, a minus 450 favorite. He didn't win that fight, so he's got to go back and reinvent himself. He takes some time off, ends up with the LFA. 2 straight finish wins. He becomes their vacant bantamweight champ. And if you look at it in terms of the lineage of LFA bantamweight champs, it starts with Leandro Higo, then Ricky Simone, Casey Kenny. The lineage, it's there. Zviad Lashishvili, who ended up in the UFC, but he was a juicy boy. So he couldn't be around for much longer. But Muin Gafurov is such an interesting prospect because what got him into MMA was the fact that his uncle was the president of the Combat Sambo Federation of Tajikistan. And he said, don't get into football. Get into Combat Sambo. And he did, and he became a world champion, not at once, but at twice, 2013, 2014. I'll throw the graphic up there because in 2013, he wins at 62 kgs. Among the winners in that tournament, Yaroslav Amosov won his division. In the second time out, Pavel Kusha, who I'm going to talk about because he fought Abubakar Nurmagomedov, won an apartment and $3,000 cash. Matt, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen anybody win ever.
No, shout out our grandfather one time at darts. He won 4 steaks and like some hash browns because that's what they give away at a rec center.
Yeah, but that's a rec center darts tournament, not a world championship in Sambo. Here, Pavel, here's the keys to an apartment. How long do you think the lease was?
You don't want 4 ribeyes?
Month to month, and we paid for 1 a month.
I love the fact that they're giving Gafurov the Sexi Mexi, though, for his UFC debut because this is no easy fight by any measure. And when I first thought of this fight, I thought, oh, they're kind of giving Gafurov, maybe not an underhand toss, but a favorable matchup. And then I started thinking about it a little bit more. Is the Sexi Mexi ever completely out of a fight? Not really. Does he make it difficult for his opponent? Yes. And the thing that I really like about Castaneda too is he has those great boxing combinations. And the thing for Gafurov is if he gets on the inside to land his own shots, and Gafurov does have interesting striking. He's got to throw from odd angles, very big looping shots. Will throw in combinations sometimes, but does overemphasize, I would say, the power shot a little bit too much because while he's searching for those big power shots, there's a large window for his opponent to counter on. And that's something John Castaneda could easily do if he does find himself reading the punches well on the back foot.
Well, and we've seen it from Gafurov in these fights. His big overhand right, if it hits the target,
oh my God,
you're done. If it misses, there's a big reset to it. We've seen fighters knee him up the middle. We've seen fighters take him down. And that's the craziest part. For Gafurov, you might think, okay, Combat Sambo world champ, like Khabib Nurmagomedov. No, it's more like Azamat Murzakanov. It's a lot of big actions on the outside to close the distance and not necessarily going to work in a lot of the wrestling. Now, Gafurov does one thing that I absolutely love, win, lose, or draw. He gets taken out a lot. I don't love that. But to get out of the bad positions, he goes leg lock, so much so that his opponents freak out, and then he gets to either go for a single leg out of that, or he gets to pop back up to his feet and fight to see another day. And for Gafurov, the weirdest part is, if you're an opponent, look at it this way. Well, he has 18 wins, and he's never won one by leg lock. So how good's it really going to be? But everybody freaks out every single time he does it. Gafurov can waste minutes off of his back. That is another kind of a chintzy thing. When he gets the takedown, he likes to threaten for the back. He likes to try for arm bars as well. He's been in some tricky armbar positions himself. But the best part out of Gafurov, though, is he tends to be in these fights, no matter the first round, the second round, the third round, and so on. But I do worry a lot. Again, it is on a week and a half notice. If you look at it for John Castaneda, he wrestled at Minnesota State Mankato. You know Mankato to be a hockey, like, mecca. But for John Castaneda, that tricky southpaw, we were excited about him coming into the UFC. Couldn't close the distance against Nathaniel Wood in his debut. No shame in that. Fight. He beat Eddie Wineland. Now, late career Eddie Wineland's weird because 2017 on, who beat him? Sean O'Malley beat him. John Dodson was able to beat him. Cody Stamann beat him. And Turbo Perez beat him. All four of those guys lost their next fight. But John Castaneda won his next fight. He's the only one to break the Wineland curse. But then his last time out, he takes on Daniel Santos, who's also on this card. An awesome first round. He kept landing the power shots. He nearly finished Santos, but in the second round, knees to the body and a lot of work up against the cage. That was to his demise. That fight was at a catchweight of 140. So watch the weight, I guess, throughout this week. For both guys. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting fight because I've seen a lot of love online for Muin Gafurov. Contender series before, so on and so forth. There's definitely going to be a wave of fans for Gafurov in this matchup, but this isn't as cut and dry, I think, as maybe you think if you don't watch the tape.
Well, it's definitely a fight where I would probably pick Gafurov if it wasn't on short notice, put it that way. But the fact that it's, 10 days? That's not a lot of time to get ready for a cage fight. Normally guys have 2 months to do it. So for Gafurov, I think the short notice aspect will be difficult, but I'm glad we have spoken about his resume because you might look at the 4 losses on his way into the UFC and think, oh, really? Some guy with a bunch of losses? You can lose and it makes you better over time. If you're young, especially, which he is, he did improve after all those losses, and I do think that's a really important thing to bring up as well. So I think this is an extremely well-matched fight for his UFC debut to be taking place under.
If you do look at it, Matt, this fight was, as I said, just announced not that long ago. You consider it for a guy like John Castaneda. He was favored to beat Mateus Mendonça, but not a lot of odds out there yet. So we have a look at the fan vote to give us a help over on Topology. Surprise to us as they are to you. I'm going to say over under 60% for John Castaneda.
I'll say over.
And it is the opposite.
Wow.
873 total votes, 69% Gafurov, 21% by decision, 69% by knockout. For the 31% that have Castaneda, 67% by decision. And Castaneda, again, the former Combate bantamweight champ. He had the fights with Jose Alday. He fought a really high-level competition over there with Combate. He's one of those guys, as you said, he mixes it head to body really well, left hook to the body. You saw him with the knees and with everything against Miles Johns. It was a knee in the third round. He drops Johns, then he gets the arm triangle choke. He set it up, and then Johns, holding on to his leg, gives up on him and ends up getting just choked out. So some crazy stuff there. Win over Marcelo Rojo over with Combate as well. So if you look at this matchup, Matt, I think this is now like the best fight on the card, or at least in the top 3. Who's the pick in this fight?
I have a really hard time with this fight because, again, I think Gafurov would win if he had 2 months to get ready for it. Now, does he win if he has 2 weeks to get ready for it? Does he win if he has a month to get ready for it? I think his striking on the inside will be good enough to not get clipped by some of the combinations of Castaneda. I feel like I did set this video up as a very pro-Castaneda pick, so hopefully me picking Gafurov will give people a good excuse to go out there and pick Castaneda, because I think he can have good success in the back feet, and that's why I bring up how well-rounded he is. He can finish you on the feet, on the mat, and what I do like about him is he can hurt you on the feet and then finish the fight on the mat. That's a skill set that not every fighter can possess, and it shows that, hey, you don't need to have the greatest level of wrestling to be able to get the fight to the mat. If you can hurt guys with your hands or your legs, I think you can have success. The more I'm talking, the more I want to pick Castaneda, so I'm just going to pick Gafurov and end it there.
The most fun I had today rewatching fights was watching Muin Gafurov fights to get ready for this one. I mean, the takedowns for and against, they can be an issue. His last time out there, in a phone booth, within like 3 feet, he throws a spinning back kick to the body. Heel hits the liver. Opponent goes down. Gafurov's your champ. It's a lot of fun there, but it's a lot of big actions. The craziest part about it for Gafurov is when he's on the outside, Nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. I think John Castaneda with the leg kicks, the pot shots, I think he's going to have a lot of success. I just need to see these two guys on Friday weigh in. That's going to be a big decider in the matchup. We're split on the pick. Matt going with Tajikistan's own Muin Gafurov. I'm going with John Castaneda. There's going to be a lot of people out there slamming the steering wheel, like hitting the table. You guys split picks? We don't talk about them before we pick them. But in this one, again, we are split. Some big-time matchups on the card. Kai Kara-France taking on Amir Albazi in the main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.